Ladies and gentlemen, what is up? It's Skill Up here. As you are most likely aware, a number of us have done a podcast after the release of each major content patch, and it's no different this time around, except for the fact that we have a hell of a lot more to talk about. Massive have just unveiled their Year 2 content plans, and obviously plenty of people in the community have something to say about it. We're no different, so we're going to be talking about that today. Joining me here, I have, as always, Mr. Arekkz.
Hey, what's up? Thank you for having me. It's good to be back, as always.
Absolutely, man. Welcome back, welcome back. We have all the way from the Netherlands, Mr. MarcoStyle.
All the way from across the globe. Hey, I'm glad to be back, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. We were to have Like Butter here as well, but unfortunately he's MIA, so hopefully he does turn up during the stream, or the podcast, I should say. But the other person, I said we were going to have a special guest. This person is maybe not known to some of you out there who have more recently started playing the game, but he is a content creator of tremendous reputation playing the game back from vanilla. I am, of course, talking about the triumphantly returned Mr. BreezyPeazy. What is up, dude?
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So glad to have you back. Breezy was just an awesome content creator that had to take a bit of a break from content for a while, but he's back now, which is just awesome. So do check out his channel, BreezyPeazy. It's really awesome to have him back, and we're having him back especially because he sort of brings, funnily enough, the perspective of a returning player, because he really only started playing the Division again, 1.6, if I'm not mistaken. Breezy, you sort of came back for that patch, or were you sort of, keeping it or sort of staying in touch with it before that as well?
No, 1.6.
There we go. Perfect. So that's a really good perspective, I think, for this discussion. So yeah, guys, we're going to be talking about how 1.6 landed, as well as the obviously the Year 2 news. So we'll get straight into it now by talking. Let's take a step back and look at things at the where 1.6 really began, which was with the Elite Task Force. It would have been great to have Drew here for this part of the discussion, but we'll sort of press on without him and ask, what do you guys think of this most recent ETF, and in particular, do you feel like it really made a lot of difference? For those of you that don't know what this is, by the way, out there, the Elite Task Force is where Massive sends a whole bunch of people to their studio, except this time they sent them to Red Storm in North Carolina, because they were taking the lead on the development of the Last Stand DLC. They get these people out there, they just ask them what they think over about 3 or 4 days of play and workshops and the like, and then hopefully after that they take that output and they change the game. They improve the build, and it goes into the game. But a few people are of a view that hasn't really happened this time around, and that feedback wasn't really reflected. So from what you guys saw of the ETF, looking outside in, and also I think, Marco, you're on the ETF forums, aren't you?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so maybe we'll start with you, Marco. How valuable do you think the Elite Task Force was this time around?
It's really difficult for me to say, because obviously I wasn't at Red Storm myself, so I can't speak for Like Butter or anyone there, how much interaction there was, how much they had to say about the changes. But what I did notice is that I had a lot of interaction with the developers on the forums. I reported many bugs which were not patched over the few weeks that the ETF lasted, or not the ETF, the PTS lasted. So I was expecting them not to be fixed in the final build for 1.6, but then when the final build for 1.6 came out, a lot of things got fixed. A lot of things are also still in there. I know a lot of people are talking about the revive bugs and stuff like that. I reported those things, and unfortunately, Massive was not able to fix them. But how much, if you're asking how much impact the ETF at the Red Storm had, I really wouldn't be able to tell you, because I wasn't there. I know that they had a couple of workshops, more specifically one about the named weapons. And as far as I can tell, the named weapons haven't really changed from that initial workshop. I think that the biggest changes to the named weapons were around the Hungry Hawk and the new Valkyria weapons, where they were broken basically, so they had to be changed. But that was not something that had to do with the design. It was more that a couple of number tweaks, because the numbers were obviously messed up, doing 1 million crits and that kind of stuff. So,
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know how much impact it actually had.
Yeah. And Arekkz, what are your thoughts, man? Did you sort of follow the process closely? Do you have a sense of whether or not this actually made a difference, or do you feel like it was a bit of a PR stunt?
So no, I think it definitely makes a difference. It's definitely not a PR stunt. That for sure is, to get it very clear. This is done with genuine intentions. They do genuinely want to listen to the community. However, while I'm not part of the ETF forums, I'm not part of the ETF, so I can't really speak about the process inside. having worked in the industry and worked especially in a test environment before, I can of course comment on that front. And the one thing that I think my main kind of gripe with the ETF, not the ETF as in the people that are involved, but the process, is that I feel like Massive bring people in too late. The problem that they have, from what I can understand based on feedback and what people have said about the ETF, is that effectively they invite a group of people there. They have a build of the game because they want people to play it, which is fair enough because I can appreciate in order for them to get feedback from people, they want people to play something. However, the problem with that, doing it so late in development, knowing how development works, knowing how long the process takes, and knowing what needs to be done. The problem with this is that there's only so much the ETF can have an impact on. They can't they can't drastically change or fundamentally change the way the game is, because what they're being presented is like, this is the game. For example, let's take 1.6. Obviously, again, I wasn't there, just to kind of be very clear, but they'll be like, this is a build of 1.6. This is our vision. We are fixed on our vision, but we want you to try and tweak small things and kind of give us feedback, which is fair enough. But I feel like the kind of better thing, especially given that this is such a big community-focused game, and the initiative behind the ETF is to get the community to help shape the game. I feel like what is far more valuable is to is basically to kind of formalize an ETF. For example, looking forward to say year 2, 1.7. If they were to get people in ahead of time and have them before there's even a playable build, and just be like, this is what we think we want to do for 1.7. This is what we want to bring you. What do you think about this? And have it much more conversational, because in truth, over 3 days of people playing a build, there's only so much you can find. You'll find a hell of a lot more when you deploy a PTS, right? So the 12 people in the ETF playing a build for 3 days, they're not going to find a great deal versus letting the community go hands-on in a PTS. So I think what would be far more valuable is to say, all right, here's a cross-section of the player base, your PvEers, your PvPers, your solo, your group players. Here's what we want to do, and here is, can you tell us what you think? What would you like to see implemented? Because then if they do it early enough, people can have a genuine impact on the way the game is shaped. So I feel like that as a process going forward, to be very clear, I think it's incredible to the way and kind of the amount they engage the community, giving them the opportunity to help shape this game. They recognize the community built this game with them, so they want to kind of let them have a hand in it. But I feel like the way the ETF works right now, it is still very much like tweaking small things, moving like pieces around a board without actually actively changing the board. So
yes, I see a lot of what you're saying. I see a lot of what you're saying back in my experience with 1.4. This has nothing to do with 1.6, but when I went over to Massive, it was mostly, we have role tiers, we have this and this system. We're there to fix the loopholes, so to speak, to make sure that there are not any like game-breaking things or like oversights, or maybe add some IDs on top of it that might be a modifier here or there, but it's not like we're not creating the patch itself. We're not creating the game mode. We're not
exactly.
So that is what the ETF does. We're not here to redesign the game. Basically, I think you made a really good point there.
So yeah, Breezy, as an example, because obviously you weren't involved in this process either. Would you rather go to an ETF and have input at the design phase before this was all kicking off, or would you rather go there when there's already a build in place and you can kind of see and experience it yourself and give feedback on the build? Like, what would be your preference?
From what everybody else was saying, it does sound like you guys have convinced me, right? That basically the design phase would be better. But I mean, it's sort of like at the same time, I'm sure Massive has said, like, they read the Reddit, they watch the streams, and content creators are continuously giving their opinions on how something could be better or fixed or changed. They probably do listen to us and maybe even take some of the ideas, but I don't know if it would be any different if like they actually invited, here's 12 people, let's sit and have a discussion about how we can make this game better, and then take those ideas and turn that into a patch later on. I don't know. But it would be cool, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think either way, it's a really good initiative, and I'm really glad it exists. And I'm sure the format will evolve over time, but it's just good to know that there is a touch point like this for the community, and that is not just like YouTubers and streamers, but like actual players, you know what I mean? Like people who don't have YouTube channels or whatever as well. And I think that is really great. So hopefully they keep it going into the future. One thing that they'll surely keep going as well was the PTS. Mm-hmm. Now the PTS is the player test server, and that's the place where people can test out the game or the new build of the game before it goes live on the live servers. They've had 2 of these PTSs now, and they've been both exclusive to PC, but in future they're also going to be coming to console, which was something that they informed us of at the State of the Game this week. So let's just talk general feedback on this PTS and how it went. And I guess my first question is around the way that Massive were able to control the message, because at the beginning of the PTS cycle, I feel like the wheels really came off the 1.6 bandwagon. I got the sense that people were so disappointed with what they were seeing in it that it really was not generating hype and buzz and was really causing a lot of problems. So maybe Arekkz, what are your general thoughts on how useful the PTS was at sort of building hype and momentum? And we'll talk obviously about sort of technical changes and improvements in a moment.
So, I mean, I think the thing is that a PTS is never, like, realistically, a PTS isn't there to generate hype, and I think that's the problem. I think it has the kind of opposite effect. A PTS is there for us to test. And it goes without saying, PTS are very useful, and I'm very, very glad that the consoles are finally going to get them, because, the consoles make up effectively 2/3 of our player base. So to have that, just in a test environment, to have infinitely more people testing, it means there's more chance of finding stuff. So that's a great move forward. But for 1.6, I think the one problem they have, right, and I appreciate they want to test everything, but in truth, most players aren't. Most players they're good at finding things. I mean, Marco is an excellent person at finding bugs and finding things, but we're not. Most people aren't trained as testers, right? Most people are just gamers, right? They play stuff, and they will, if they come across an issue, they'll try and report it. They'll make a video. They do whatever they want to do, but they're not. They're not testers, right? Not in the conventional sense. So. Given and even in a test environment, if you want someone to test something, when I worked on Forza Horizon 1, you have very focused tests. It's like, we want you to test destruction, so this is what you do. When they gave us the PTS, they were like, right, here's 1.6, here's Last Stand, here's the Incursion, here's Dark Zone 7, 8, and 9, here's all these new exotic weapons. It's like, hold on a minute, how am I supposed to, even a tester, like a trained tester, can't test all of that in the short time period you had. So I think the problem they're having, right, they need to be a lot more focused if they want to get feedback. Because giving people, like, effectively the whole of 1.6, it means that anyone that's on console is living vicariously through people streaming on PC. It kind of somewhat detracts the hype. I mean, something like an Incursion, I think Deep Fried Dave was saying on Twitter, and I completely agree. There's certain aspects of an expansion that I feel should never hit the PTS. An Incursion is something that, yes, I know they've had problems in the past. I mean, you look to, like, Falcon Lost or Clear Sky and whatnot. So I can appreciate why they want to put an Incursion in the PTS. But that, to me, especially given, the whole kind of, there's a certain element of people wanting to kind of compete when it goes live and trying to be world first and whatnot. If that's been in the PTS and half the audience has already played through it, that magic is gone, right? There's absolutely no magic, nothing left to kind of reveal about 1.6. Everyone's already seen it. So I feel like they should try and, going forward, they should try and be a little bit more targeted. Be like, all right, we want you to test Last Stand. The only thing you can do is Last Stand. You can't have exotic weapons. You can't have gear. You can just do this. Or we want you to test exotics. You can't access anything but this stuff here. I think they should try and be a little bit more focused with them, because A, then it means that if they want to get results, they can then funnel everyone in the same place. And B, it then kind of leaves some magic behind. I mean, I think similar things been happening with Battlefield 1. They just dropped the CTF or whatever it's called, the CT.
Yeah.
And they, I was speaking to one of the Battlefield YouTubers, and he's like, yeah, they've basically deployed the whole update. So now, again, the DLC packs that are coming out, there's no magic anymore because everyone's playing it. So yeah, I feel like PTS have the opposite effect for hype. I don't think they really generate hype, because it just distributes that message across like a big month-long period.
Sure. Breezy, did you get a chance to go on the PTS at all?
I did not.
Okay, right. Okay, cool. So, wondering in terms of where we think the balance has landed after that, whether or not the PTS was actually useful. I know, Marco, you did a lot of work in the PTS testing out bugs and the like. What's your perspective on how useful you think the PTS was from a balance and technical fine-tuning perspective?
I'm gonna be honest here, but I'm kind of negative towards this whole balancing subject. The fact that I'm able to make a best in slot guide again, or a gear set tier list again, where there is such a big difference in just picking electronics over stamina, or doing it the other way around and that kind of stuff. It just bothers me that those things aren't fixed on a PTS, because right now we end up again in a situation where there are just a few things that are most predominant to take, health and electronics, for example, and all the other set rolls basically end up being semi-useless. And what bothers me probably the most is that as soon as these IDs are brought up, the developers usually put these IDs on the forums even before announcing them, right? On the ETF forums. And then I try to reply as fast as possible with, if you do this, then that's going to be bad, that's going to be good, that's going to be overpowered, or that's going to be underpowered. What happens next is that these features are implemented anyway, and after I make a video about it, then they are not removed from the ETF and it goes into the live, or not removed from the PTS and it goes into the live game. And that just bothers me. It honestly just bothers me, because now stamina is a bad stat to take, almost as bad as firearms is. And firearms is still kind of a bad stat right now, which it makes the time to kill almost the same for everybody, no matter how much stamina you spec into or how much firearms you spec into. People die at the same rate right now, but from a buildings perspective, from building character perspective, there isn't much of an option, and it just bothers me, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as well, beyond what you've said, which I totally agree with, there's also things that the PTS just doesn't pick up that make it into the live game that people very quickly seize upon, like the heal boosting in Last Stand is not something that we saw in PTS. We did see some changes made to the way they calculated points on healing, but obviously there just wasn't enough people testing it or breaking it, so to speak, on the PTS, and we arrive at a position now where PTS was essentially, Last Stand was essentially unplayable because of the fact that everyone was doing this, just standing in base, healing each other, and just getting ridiculous amounts of loot for doing it. So
I'm not even mad about that, because that's something that they can easily fix, and they've already launched a patch for it, right?
That.
You're super mad about that?
Yeah, that is, in my view, something so basic and so debilitating on the game experience, and it took so long to fix it. And when I say so long, I know it only took a week, whatever, a bit over a week, but that is so long given how destructive that experience was.
I can agree with you on that, but on a bigger picture, I don't think it's that big of a deal that people boost points for a week. What I'm more annoyed with and concerned about is that on a competitive level for Last Stand, even let's say it's fixed now, right? So no more boosting, everybody's trying to win their games properly, everybody's playing properly. Then still on a competitive level, Last Stand still is not offering a good experience, because there are still so many broken mechanics that just prevent it from being good. And those are a lot harder to fix than a simple heal boost over a week. And I think that those issues, those are the ones that should have been addressed on the PTS. And it's too late now. That's what's bothering me.
And I guess because the thing is, some of those are legacy bugs from a long time ago that are just still in the game.
Yes, since launch.
Some of those are new things. Yeah, some of those are new things as well. And I guess my question is this current PTS model working? And what some other games do that also have console presence is that they actually deploy their live patches to PC ahead of consoles, and they say this is going out first on PC. Console people are going to have to wait because and I'm not talking about a PTS, by the way. I'm saying there can be a PTS, and it tests on PC and whatever else, and then it goes onto the PC live server so that all PC players can test it, and then they deploy to consoles because it's much more costly and it takes a lot more time for them to do that, so they can get everything hopefully worked out on the PC first, and then console players can get it after. I don't
think that that's a good idea, because there's usually a waiting time for consoles. Like Microsoft and Sony have to approve it. That's going to take a week. Then it's also going to take 2 weeks. You're talking about a month exclusive on the PC. I think that's going to be destructive for the console players, because then again you have the situation where we're at with the PTS right now, where you're seeing basically the whole update. That magic is gone. What we just talked about. You're seeing the whole update.
But I would so trade away. If I was I will so fully say I'm not a console player, right? But I will put myself in the shoes of a console player. And if you gave me the choice of a hyped up product that's broken, or a product I knew exactly what it was, but it works, I will choose the functional product every single time. Now, I know that's not everyone's view, but it's at the point with bugs, and it's always been this way, to be honest, but they are so debilitating for the experience that we need to think outside the box about how we can make this better. And I don't feel like our
What about just extending the PTS for a couple more weeks so that you don't have the final game, people can't get ahead? Just extend the PTS, give more time to testing, and maybe even add a console PTS.
In honesty, right, it's not about You could give people 2 more weeks in the current format, and it still wouldn't make a difference. The thing is, it has
Agreed.
like realistically, it goes back to what I was saying before, right? The solution for this is they need to be a lot more targeted, because you have to appreciate that people aren't trained as testers, and therefore a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is not a complaint in any way, but a lot of people just see the PTS as a means to play the game they love early, right? They don't necessarily see it as, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to test and I'm going to actively try and find bugs. They're just like, I'm playing Last Stand. I've been looking forward to this. I'll play it. So some people don't see it as a means to properly test. They're just like, I'm playing. And if you don't direct those people, like if those people are not trained as testers, if they don't know specifically what to look for, you're not going to be able to get the feedback you want. So the thing is, right, it's not about the timeline, it's about how they construct the PTS. They need to be a lot more focused. It needs to be like ultra restrictive. Like if they want to test something, for example, I know they've done it to a certain extent. There was a part where they basically disabled Last Stand because they wanted us to like test the open world stuff and like the exotics and stuff. But they need to be like, all right, we are the big thing for this. The big ticket item is Last Stand, so you physically can't do anything else. Like they need to ultra lock it down, so you can't even roam outside the base of operations. The only thing you can do is load into the terminal, go into Last Stand, and that's the only thing you're doing like back to back. Because then, if you do this right for people that aren't trained as testers, but then you're still funneling them into the experience you want to have tested. Hopefully, by just forcing people through this experience, they will encounter stuff like this. So, if for that PTS period you knew that 100% of your player base was only playing Last Stand, there's a bigger chance of you discovering that than knowing that like 50% of your player base are playing Last Stand.
Sure.
The other 50% are off in DZ 7, 8, and 9 taking photos of the graffiti. It's like, that's cool, but that's not going to help us, right? And but again, this it's not the player's fault because they're not testers, they're players, right? They're players who might just find things. So that's that the solution isn't to delay it or to give you a lot more time. The solution is that Massive need to be very clear to say, right, PTS week 1. It's not like week 1 where you test everything. It's week 1 is Last Stand. Week 2 is this thing. And if they have to accompany it with, say, like, how like when you load up the game, a patch comes out and it's got notes of like, these are your patch notes. It should have like a welcome screen, be like, right, guys, PTS week 1, we really need to test this aspect of Last Stand. Can you please go into the game and do this? Like, if you ask your players to do stuff, and then hopefully they funnel through it, then you can effectively, because that's basically what testing is, right? When I used to work as a tester, you have the developers. They send you a test script and they say, right, we want to know how this works. Can you run through the paces? And then by doing that, you uncover stuff. So I think that's what Massive needs to do. Massive needs to be more targeted and not just say, this is 1.6, it's all live, mess around in it, because you're never going to do that. You physically cannot have a team. No matter how many PC players. So that's the thing. I think in my mind they need to be targeted, like ultra targeted.
Yeah. So PTS happened. It was it's always good that it happens, but it obviously didn't hit all its objectives. We obviously now have new PvE and PvE content. So I want to talk firstly about the new PvE content. So obviously, BreezyPeazy, have you had a good exposure to all of the new PvE content thus far?
I've done the new incursion and the new legendaries.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's start with the legendaries. What are your thoughts on legendary mode, man?
It reminded me a lot. This would be, referencing a different game, but if anybody was familiar with Destiny when that came out, they used to. Well, they probably still do. They had this mode. Arekkz, do you remember what it's called?
Yeah, Nightfall.
Nightfalls?
Nightfall, exactly. Nightfall, ridiculously hard. It used to be a lot harder than it is now. You would die, and it was just so hard to get through, and it took forever. But when you finally did it, you got this loot that you didn't get anywhere else, and they pretty much did that because, right, you really only want to do the legendary once a week of that specific one per character. But I think it's pretty rewarding. It's super difficult, and it's not like if they had made challenge mode or heroic that. Right, what legendary currently is, then I would hate my life, right? But it'd be like, oh, but you're gonna get an exotic cache anyways, and you'd feel like you have to just do this to get the gear that you want. So I do feel like it's incredibly difficult, but it's fine, right? Because you only need to do it once. It's really challenging, and it kind of feels good. Finally, once you get to the end of it, you get this one special reward, and yay.
Nice. And do you feel like the balance or the difficulty that they've brought in is the right type of difficulty? Because many people, not many people, but certainly some people I've seen are saying this thing is just too damn hard. It's like 1.3 all over again. Massive please. You're trying to make the game too hard. Like, do you feel like they've built the right experience, or do you feel like they've just sort of, they've gone back to habits that should have been left back in the past?
I definitely agree that the type of difficulty they chose is artificial difficulty rather than relying on like mechanics or ideas, right? How can I here's a problem. I'm getting one shot by nearly everything. How can I solve this problem, right? Rather than use these specific skills in this sequence, stand over here, activate this teleporter, blah blah blah. It's just hide and cover and pop up once every 30 seconds because you're about to die. It definitely is not as cool as it could have been, right? I always prefer mechanics over just straight artificial difficulty.
Sure.
But like I said, I think it's okay because you only have to do it once a week. But if the other way would be better.
That's the interesting language. You say you only have to do it once a week. It's sort of like it's something you have to get through rather than something you truly enjoy.
Yes.
Okay. So what about Marco? What are your thoughts on Legendary, man?
I think on Legendary or in Incursion? Legendary, right?
Legendary difficulty, yeah.
Yeah, I've played both. I think the Incursion was better than Legendary, but honestly, I don't think Legendary was that big of a deal. Obviously, I got my Tactician Healer build, and then we had a guy running with a maxed out Smart Cover, giving us 60% damage resilience, and it's basically just sit in cover and kill the enemies. It wasn't that much of a challenge. I think I even did a run when I was on the phone with someone, not even communicating with my team. It's really just like NPCs hit a bit harder, and they don't even have more health. I think I don't know.
They don't have more health. No,
exactly. So it's
in fact, I think they have less health, to be honest.
Yeah. I was thinking something as well. So just get a couple guys with a sniper. Hard hitting snipers. It's basically back like in the Falcon Last Day. Sit on Smart Cover, get heals, get your M1As out, and let's go, boys. And honestly, it's like a 15-20 minute run. It takes a little bit of time, but I don't know. It's not mechanically difficult, so to speak. You just have to get the right gear.
Sure. And Arekkz, thoughts on Legendary?
I mean, I think it feels a request from not necessarily in the exact right way, but I think it feels a request from players, right? I mean, like this topic of it being too difficult and whatnot kind of stems back to I think something we tend to touch on in every single one of these podcasts. But it's important to realize this particular content, the Legendary mode, wasn't built for all players, right? There's been this kind of desire for some extremely difficult endgame content that the people that are finally min-max can use their build for. And that means, that specific bit of content may well be out of reach for a lot of players. But that's kind of why they designed it, right? It's the ultimate endgame challenge. It's not in any way mandatory, which is precisely why the only thing that is tied to it... Oh, actually, no. Technically speaking, there are exotic caches, which is a bit of an odd one. But, I mean, the main thing that's tied to it is there's an exclusive cosmetic set. So if you want to be able to show that you can get, that you're the Legendary guy, that's the main thing you go after, right? I think probably the frustrations that are tied to it is because it's also one of the main sources for exotic caches. So for everyone that wants to go and get their MDR or get that stuff, they're kind of forced into it, which is probably where they went wrong, right? If you put exotic caches in something else, like just put them in weekly assignments or put them on survival or just somewhere, right? Like maybe put them on like Last Stand as a random drop. If you didn't put exotic caches on the Legendary difficulty, I don't think you'd have quite so many complaints, because then the people that just want the challenge would go there and get their cosmetic set. Everyone else would be like, screw that, that's too difficult, I don't enjoy that, I don't want to play it. So I think probably the reason it's so difficult, is because people are almost being funneled in there because they're after exotics and they're like, ugh, I don't enjoy this. So it's a bit of a mixed message. But I think, again, it feels what people have been asking for, something that is extremely difficult. Not necessarily everyone, but there is a portion of the player base that wants something to challenge them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think it's ever a problem to have an aspect of a game that is designated for the top percentage of players. Meanwhile, the rest of the game is for everyone else. So
For sure.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I like how the enemies sort of have the hunter-esque AI. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I tried to solo it. Didn't go very well.
It's tough. I personally really love Legendary difficulty. I feel like I'm sort of in the minority in this discussion because I have just really, really enjoyed playing it so far. And I've actually really appreciated what they've done with the enemy AI in particular, because they have they hit harder and there's a lot more enemies, and so I get that artificial difficulty component. But I feel like that's fairly okay. It's not like they've just gone full bullet sponge mode and made it terrible. And I think the sort of performance of the AI in terms of the way that they flank you is far more aggressive, and it really does push you into some different patterns of play. So I personally really enjoy Legendary. I think it's been great. And the new incursion as well, interested to hear thoughts on that. That's pretty tricky. I know most players are like, don't even bother unless you have a proper group that's like, properly built out, communicating, etc. General thoughts on that? Breezy, have you had a chance to do finish the incursion on Heroic?
Yeah, actually, right before this podcast.
And cool. And like, did you enjoy it, or was it just like, oh man, this is the worst thing ever, but we did it? Or was it like, what did you think?
I have to say, I mean, there were some things in it that were kind of weird at the very end that I was kind of struggling with, but just looking at it, like, it was by far the most fun incursion experience I've ever had in the entire game. Like, it was just so cool. There was all the different phases. You got to choose which one you wanted to do first. At first, I thought you only had to do one and you could progress. But you did have to do them all. But it was really cool. Like, there was new mechanics. I didn't just have to, here, go grab this bomb, plant it, wait for the next wave, do it all over again. Like, there was nothing that was monotonous and boring. Every little section was different. It was handled differently. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it was definitely some of their best PvE work, if not their best. I really think that they kind of dug deep on it and produced something great. So hopefully we'll see more of that in the future, but we'll talk about year 2 very soon. We'll get to that in the discussion. But yeah, I think one of the challenges I think with these new additions though is that unless there's something to work for, as in new gear and new items, that there's a lot less incentive to put yourself through the punishment to do it, right? And obviously the only new stuff that was added in this patch were the new exotic items. So the background to this is that exotic or named weapons have been in the game for a long time, but they've been pretty shithouse. No one has really wanted to touch them. They've just received some buffs, and I'm interested to hear what people think of the new exotic weapons now and whether or not that redesign was successful. Marco, what are your thoughts on the new suite of exotic weapons?
I feel like a lot of the exotic weapons right now are a hit or a miss, basically. Like some of them have some useful talents, some of them not so much. What I think is a little bit weird is that some of the bonuses, such as the one from the Liberator and the Centurion, I think it is, those bonuses do not replace any of the talents. So basically, if you want to play with an M4, then a Liberator is always the best choice because you get that extra Centurion bonus from it, right? You get extra 10 RPM and what was the other thing? Like extra headshot damage on the Centurion, something like that?
That's right.
That's pretty weird. I would say that kind of makes every M4 automatically irrelevant. But there are some really cool talents in there, such as the one from the Historian. I really like that. And the one from the Ire and Hilder, where it's not too powerful, but it works in a pretty cool way.
Breezy, do you feel incentivized to want to grind out all of these exotic items, or are you just like, yeah, cool, whatevs, they're there, nice to know, doesn't really bother me?
I would say, compared to the past, I definitely am, because of The Last Stand. Like, I'm not incentivized to min-max my pieces of gear, but for the weapons, the diversity that I've been seeing in The Last Stand is much more now, and I'm really excited to try out all the different sets. So I'd say, yeah, much more than in the past. I never really cared about any of the the named weapons because they were all terrible, and now there's lots of different kinds, and they're pretty good. A couple of them. I definitely do feel an incentive to grind for them and try them out.
Mm-hmm. So, open question to everyone. Do you think that there should have been a gear score increase in this patch?
I think so, yes. I'm probably going to get...
What?
I'm going to bash in the comment section for that.
Rages.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
I just kind of feel this way because they were making changes to the gear stat rolls anyway. So you have to refarm quite some stuff anyway. Like, for example, you cannot get skill haste on the chest piece. You cannot get critical hit chance on the holster. You cannot get skill haste on the gloves. There are quite some stat rolls that you simply cannot get. And I feel like if you make that much changes to gear, you might as well up it with a gear score increase so that players have something to feel more powerful over again. At the end of the day, I gotta say it is just artificially expanding the game's lifespan, I guess, because now people have to farm more gear, have to redo the missions. But I also think that would have incentivized more people to play the new PvE content a bit more, maybe, because, as you said, like without there being any new gear, I don't think that incentive is really there.
What about you, Arekkz?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with Marco. I mean, the thing is, like, I can appreciate both sides of it, right? And it was nice to a certain extent to be able to go into Last Stand, go into 1.6, and be like, you know what, I've already worked to build something. That thing that I've worked to build is still useful, and I can appreciate that perspective. But at the end of the day, we play these games. It's we play it knowing it's a looter shooter, right? The whole reason you play these kind of games is you kill stuff, you get loot, you use that loot to build something new, and that is what keeps you going. If you have no reason to loot and shoot, then fundamentally the reason you play this game is no longer there, right? So as much as people love it or hate it, when there is a new gear score increase, in fact, if I actually look at my playtime, I've probably played this expansion. I mean, admittedly, yes, it hasn't been out as long as the others, so already it's a little bit of a skewed example. But I've probably played this expansion the least compared to the other ones. And there's still loads of aspects I really enjoy in this one. That's not to say it's a bad expansion, but because there isn't the mandatory gear score increase, there's a certain element of the playtime that I would have normally invested to kind of get back up to level that I didn't have to do. I'm already max gear score. I had a couple of decent builds that are, I'm able to run in Last Stand. So that element of looting and shooting and kind of grinding that I would have normally done to get gear back up again, I didn't have to do. So to a certain extent, a good X number of hours were just removed from my need, my necessity to play. So I think that kind of constant progression is the reason people play these games. Yes, people might find it annoying, but yeah, I think it's important, especially if we are presented with content where each expansion doesn't give you a vast amount of new stuff. There's normally one focal thing, a few PvE things, a few extra things. Then at least if there's a good underlying gear score increase, then it also gives you another reason to kind of keep playing. But if you don't have that, then it probably brings to the forefront exactly how much content there is or isn't to play.
I think the reason why people hate gear score increases so much is because, especially in the Division, it most of the time doesn't come with that much new content or any new content at all. You look at 1.5, you had survival and some gear changes, like some rebalancing, like the introduction of armor destruction in PvP. But other than that, there was no new content, no new missions, not a square inch of new map. I don't even think there was a new incursion. Like, there was nothing new in the game. So basically, it was 100% an artificial gear score increase, right? Like, they were just basically saying, "Hey, we've got a new patch. You're gonna have to grind for all your new gear again." Like that's I think that's what people hate. However, if you put a gear score increase with actual new content, then people are going to be willing to play that new content with the gear score increase.
Worked quite well with Last Stand, because then people could have played Last Stand to get loot and just geared up in the process, because
exactly,
given that Last Stand is normalized, right? They could have hopped in and been like, "Oh, we're all 275."
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So staying on the topic of gear, very interested to hear your thoughts on this, BreezyPeazy, as a returning player. What are your general thoughts on gear set balance at this point? Because certainly at certain times in the past, there's been situations where you'd really only use one or two gear sets because all of the other ones were so trash you wouldn't even think about it. So as someone that's just come back to the game in 1.6, how are you viewing the sort of gear set landscape, and how viable do you think they are?
I think things are significantly better or more diverse now than they were previously. Back then it was all just smart cover. You really just ran the same things or had the same stats, right? You always had to have enough electronics, so you'd have a strong smart cover, and a lot of the things just didn't matter. And then now you're seeing, I'm walking around in the Last Stand and I'm seeing this dude with a shield that I'm super scared of. I'm getting destroyed by some seeker mines that are really annoying. Every once in a while I see a flame turret, but that's kind of I don't really see Predator's Mark anymore, but I do see assault rifles. I've seen some SMGs, Deadeye's back and destroying me at all ranges. I think it's pretty cool. I really enjoy going into Last Stand right now because they're not the same fights. I'm not fighting the same build. A lot of the experiences are different. When I fight this guy, I'm not sure what he's actually going to hit me with or how I'm going to have to handle it until he actually starts attacking me,
For sure. that's a big statement in itself. The fact that as a returning player, you come back and immediately see that level of diversity, I think is really encouraging. Obviously we're a bit closer to that detail because we've been tracking the buffs and nerfs to each gear set throughout the life of the game. Marco, what do you think about where they've landed on some of the changes that they've made to Tacticians, Reclaimer, the Alpha nerf, the D3 nerf, those sorts of things? What do you think about those?
I think Tacticians, for one thing, for starters, is extremely strong right now. The 2-piece, pretty good, 15% skill haste, that's a lot. But especially the 4-piece, now that skill power basically isn't capped until 450,000 skill power, I believe it was, which basically means like Tacticians is the only set that allows you to get that high without stacking some weird weapon and character talents and stuff like that. And that makes the skills a lot stronger. I'm not sure about Reclaimer. Reclaimer is probably the best option for PvE because then the station doesn't die a lot of the time. Alpha's in a pretty good state as well. Defense, I see some people use it in combination with the Midas, which can be pretty powerful as well. Deadeye is still pretty powerful. I think a lot of sets are viable right now, but there's still a big difference in power when you look at PvP.
Arekkz,
thoughts on gear balance?
I mean, I think one of the things that I've had the most fun with, like interestingly, kind of looking at this expansion, is while content-wise, I may have had more fun with 1.5 in terms of like just sheer fun and experimental stuff. I probably had a lot of fun with 1.6 because I obviously in my process of going through testing all the exotic weapons, I'm kind of pairing it up with gear sets. I've been messing around with a lot of things, and one not necessarily every build I've been messing around with is maybe say top 1% build that you would like aspire to have if you're going in for absolute optimum playstyle. I've definitely found that you can get away with a lot more, which is nice because running into like PvE content, like I probably spend a lot more time with PvE than I do PvP. Obviously that trying to change that a lot with Last Stand and whatnot, which I'm having a lot of fun with. But I mean I've been finding there's I feel like there is at least to a certain extent you can get away with a lot more now. Yes, again there are still a few that are in the kind of top tier. So if you are kind of that driven or that kind of particular player, you are going to kind of gravitate towards them. But personally, I still run around with I've messed around with Firecrest. I've still been messing around with Predator Mark a lot recently. I'm always going to be that Firecrest guy. I think I'm secretly a cleaner or something. But no, yeah, I think there's definitely there's no denying there is more build diversity. Maybe not quite to the extent that we still want it, but I have at least been there's more scope for me to
for sure
be experimental.
For sure. So I guess it'd be probably a good time now to talk about the Last Stand game mode and what we think about that. The Last Stand game mode is that specific PvP arena that you load into. It's what people have been crying out for since the game was released, really, because the Dark Zone is obviously a bit of a mixed affair in terms of the PvP experiences you can have in there. So BreezyPeazy, what do you think, man? What do you think of the Last Stand game mode?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I
love it.
Really enjoy just every time I go in there. I'm really excited for it. But I don't think it's perfect. I think it definitely has its flaws, even without talking about the balance of items, specifically Seeker. I think the maps are too big, right?
Yeah.
Because you're playing Control, which means like you're supposed to defend your points, right? That's the whole point of Control. You take a base, I attack your base, you attack my base. If I see it, I go back and I defend it. But I mean, it takes me 20 minutes just to get back to my starting base. You know what I mean? By that time, you've already taken it, ate a sandwich, and returned back to B. Like this, it's just not happening. But as far as just going in there and finally not having to, experience the Dark Zone, like having some real team fights, there's just a bunch of people all over the place. I love it. I think it's really fun.
Awesome. Have you had much of a chance to play it, Arekkz?
Yeah, I played it a fair bit. I genuinely really do enjoy Last Stand. I mean, I jokingly say it's not actually a PvP mode; it's a PvE with optional PvP because you don't you can win a Last Stand game mode without ever killing a single player. So it's not technically a PvP mode. But no, all jokes aside, I enjoy it because I've always liked PvP in Division, but obviously there was a part where right at the beginning I look back to say beta launch 1.1.1.2, I used to live in the dark zone, right? I was more PvP than I was PvE. Then obviously I kind of made a transition when it started to go to pot and whatnot. So it's nice to come back in, and especially having, in light of what I was just talking about with I like messing around with experimental builds. I can take them into Last Stand and get decent results. Again, sure, if I face up against someone like Marco, I'm probably going to lose. But generally speaking, it's a nice balanced environment where anytime I die in Last Stand, I'm not like, oh, that was an unfair fight, why the hell did I die there? I'm like, I died because I was standing out in the open. I was being an idiot. Like, generally speaking, I'm happy with most of the engagements to the point where I feel like if I died, it's cool. If I killed someone, again, it's been cool. I've been messing around with like the MDR and still getting decent results. That's my favorite gun. And prior to that, I wouldn't dare take the MDR into the Dark Zone because I know it wouldn't get the same results. But in Last Stand, it's pretty cool. But I completely echo, that is the one thing I said when I first played it in 1.6. I completely echo what Breezy said. The maps are far too big. I mean, just, I mean, for a control game type, we shouldn't be exploring DZ 1 and 2 and 3. We should be exploring, like, even DZ 1 itself would be probably still too big. Like, it's far too big. I mean, but again, the reason they've kind of obviously done that is because they factored in a PvE component. I feel, and like, because, and to a certain extent that makes sense because if you've got roaming enemies, you kind of want to give them space. So I feel like maybe the kind of counterpoint to that would be if they made a second version, maybe they could deploy this and say like 1.7, they add like another playlist that is just pure PvP Last Stand, get rid of the NPCs, much smaller maps.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, that's my main gripe. Like, Last Stand, fundamentally, fun to play, enjoy it, just maps are far too big.
Yeah. So, Marco, I know obviously you've been playing lots of Last Stand. My question for you is, which do you prefer more? Do you prefer Dark Zone PvP or do you prefer Last Stand PvP?
I honestly wish you would have asked me the other question. How do you like Last Stand? Because I have a very different point of view.
Well, you can weave that into your response to my question. You can cover both bases.
I think that this patch, more than anything, has kind of killed the PvP for me. And I'm gonna need to do some explaining here because of Last Stand being a thing, the Dark Zone is a wasteland right now. Like, there's a couple guys farming here and there, but cannot. You kill a couple guys, they just switch servers because they don't want to PvP. There's no one there left wanting to PvP. So, what do you think? When I want to PvP, I go into Last Stand, but because Last Stand is 8 versus 8, there's not a room to really improve with just you and the people that you play with, because every game you're gonna get RNG teammates that are gonna do whatever. They one time they might be decent, they would capture the home base. Another time they're gonna AFK for like 5 minutes before the game even starts, right? And not only that, but Last Stand has mechanics that you only get points when you, for example, control A as a whole. You have 3 capture points, right? So when you control all 3 of them, then you start earning points. But there's also the mechanic where if you don't have your home base, you can only spawn at your home base. So basically what you can do is you can run to the enemy's home base, you can capture 1 point, and then basically abuse like the insane healing build that I have in combination with like the side strafing thing and like tossing grenades at that 1 point to basically deny the opponent from having any spawn points other than their home base, and also deny them from getting points in general. And there's many more examples such as that, which basically break the gameplay experience. Like, if you're really dedicated to win every game, you can just do that every game, and there's not a whole lot that the enemy can do about it. And the fact that there's no room for advanced strategies because you can just cheese it like that, and the fact that there's no room for advanced strategies because you always have random teammates, you can't improve. If you lose, it could be because of your teammates. There's no way to tell. And the fact that the DZ is pretty much a wasteland, where, the DZ was really the place where you and your squad, you and your team, it mattered, right? Like, you could be facing 8, 12, 16 people, but if you had good teamwork, you could come out ahead, and then you would feel satisfied. I have had manhunts, I even uploaded some on the channel, where I would basically kill 100 people in a row, just because of the builds, the synergy, the teamwork, that kind of stuff, but that's not here anymore. Basically, Last Stand is just a pleb slaughterfest, so to speak, and the DZ is a wasteland. That's really it.
Last Stand is a pleb slaughterfest. Is that what you just said?
That's what it's the way it is. There's no skill based matchmaking. Like, you could win 100 times in a row.
Apparently,
but it's not showing. Like, I did a challenge with my team to basically win. True, but when you're facing 16 people as 4, then all those players together, that makes for the challenge, right? That makes you have to have the teamwork, the skills, the builds to come out ahead and to survive that manhunt. And you get 100 kills in the process. That's the challenge. That's what made the game exciting. But in Last Stand, it's like you could win 100 games in a row and still get matched against people that have a level 1 and just came back to the game out of nowhere. It's the competitive matchmaking. It's not there. The skill-based matchmaking, it's not working. And when you're fighting good players, you can just cheese it all the way around, or you could end up with really bad teammates that could mess it up for you in that case. It's just basically this patch has killed PvP for me. I understand that's not everybody's point of view because not everybody has a squad to play or as many hours into the game as myself. But this patch was really bad for a lot of the hardcore players, I feel like.
Well, I find that really interesting because I did a extremely popular series on my thoughts on PvP and the Dark Zone that the community absolutely loved. And my basic premise was that, like, I don't think the PvP in this game is good. Now, I'm not, like, here to beat that drum because I know that, like, well and truly many, many people disagree with me. But, for example, with the Dark Zone, if the Dark Zone experience was truly great, wouldn't it have survived Last Stand and still be
I don't think that the
today?
Dark Zone experience was great for the majority of the players. However, for the players that are actually good at the game, that actually know every corner, every inch of the DZ, they can do whatever they want. Like, they can take on 10, 12...
So the issue is not the design of the Dark Zone. The issue is whether or not you were good at it.
It's both.
I would agree.
It's both because the design of the Dark Zone is that it puts noobs, first-time players, against seasoned players. There's design issues with the Dark Zone. The fact that you can like spawn camp certain places, but that is also the case in Last Stand, as I just mentioned. Like, you capture their home base, they can only spawn in one place, and then you can just spawn camp them there. I have many examples. I did it at the streamer house. I did it to good players as well. You can't escape it.
But when you say good players, I mean, you just listed Streamer House, who are like full-time, obviously, players of this game. Obviously, you're a very hardcore full-time player of this game. I mean, my question is, how much of this experience was actually good on its own merit versus how much of it was good for the way that you and a very select number of people were able to experience it? And I'm not saying you, MarcoStyle. I'm saying, like, the type of player that's...
I'm saying that this patch was good for this patch was good for a lot of the casual players. They can go in PvP, have some fun. It's fun for them, but I just said it as well. Like, for the hardcore players, for the hardcore PvPers that are looking for something competitive, I don't think this patch was good. That doesn't mean it's not good for the majority of the players. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for the hardcore PvPers, I don't think it's that good.
I get you. Yeah, Breezy. Sorry, what do you want to say?
With all the PvP that I used to do, just running around the Dark Zone, the reason why I like Last Stand so much, well, I agree with everything that you've said. Literally every single thing in the abuse with the point system. It needs a lot of work, and it's a really bad version of Control, essentially. It just makes me think back to all those times that I ran around the Dark Zone and I couldn't find people. Like, I would spend an hour just looking for servers,
absolutely,
just trying to find those. Like I've said this many times in my stream, the best fights that I ever had in the Dark Zone, that experience, Last Stand could probably never touch it, right? Some of those moments were amazing. They felt so good. Just people dying left and right. You were just killing everybody with your squad.
You versus the world, right?
Tons of fun.
Like, that's that feeling. Yeah, and that's gone in 1.6. It's gone. Like, you don't have that anymore.
But is that... Go on.
I'm basically saying at the same time, while it had those amazing highs, they happen so rarely that, like, I at least enjoy going into Last Stand and just knowing that I go in there and I'm going to fight somebody, you know? And I don't worry about the points, honestly. When I go in there, I don't care whether I win or lose because the system sucks. But I know, when I see this dude, we're going to fight. And I like that,
Sure.
I think the other thing to bear in mind as well, I mean, to kind of the Wasteland point, is that they've expanded the Dark Zone yet further, where there's a whole 3 more zones. And yet it's still the same small number of players, right? There are 24 people now running around in what is effectively, like, I haven't got a clue, like 20, 30
a PvE Dark Zone. It's a PvE Dark Zone. It's pretty funny because the first time we get a real map expansion, it's probably going to be an area that the least amount of players are going to play. This is going to be the most underused area of the game because the DZ is a wasteland.
But that is This is exactly what I predicted, though, because, like, I knew that when this Last Stand game mode came around that no one would be in the Dark Zone. I have been going into the Dark Zone lately just to, like, check it out and see what it's like, because I'm like, hey, let's check it out in 1.6, and you're right, there's nobody in there. And I knew this would happen because, like, this is my personal view that for the vast majority of players, the Dark Zone is not a good experience for them. And so when they have the option to do something else, they will do that. The Dark Zone was servicing such a tiny portion of the population that when the vast majority had an alternative, they would do it, like, and so I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like there was a chance to reform the Dark Zone, to hold on to some of its the things that really made it great, like the moments that you're describing, Marco and Breezy, but at the same time to do some things to attract players to it, so that you get to still enjoy it, Marco. You know what I mean? Because now, the whole thing that the reason I did my series of video is like I believe in the idea of the Dark Zone, but clearly it needs to evolve, and it didn't evolve at all, and now it's just this wasteland.
I think you're right about that, but I also think that Last Stand has a big play in it. Because people that want a PvP, they go to Last Stand, right? They just want to play some straight up PvP because Dark Zone isn't offering that anymore. But the people that want loot, they also play Last Stand because it gives more loot in the Dark Zone if you play it right.
Yep.
So it's like people that want to farm, they can go Last Stand. They don't have to have good gear to farm in Last Stand because they just have to play, gear gets normalized. And people that want to play PvP go Last Stand. Like, what role does the Dark Zone leave? Like a couple of farmers that want to check out the new areas. I mean, that's good and all, but you've been there two times and you're like, all right, this is cool. Let's play Last Stand, right?
Yeah, I mean, what they really need. I mean, to be honest, like the true fix for it, unfortunately, isn't really, it's a fix in the underlying system. Is the way that the Dark Zone is so huge, and then the only way you can really make huge play spaces work with such a small amount of people is you need basically like it's. Kind of to a certain extent the way that Destiny open spaces work. Not that Destiny is kind of a great example because I don't actually like their open spaces. They're barren and lifeless. But the way that they juggle players, you basically have like in each space it can hold up to I think it's 16 players, but they work in these little bubbles and you basically go between these zones. So effectively it tries to create this environment where there are always people in these zones. By if someone goes out there and they load out, then someone else loads in. And I appreciate that doesn't necessarily work in the Dark Zone because if you're trying to chase someone, you don't want them going through a loading zone. But if there's a way to try and, at least to a certain extent, create that experience whereby, say, if Marco and his team go into the Dark Zone and someone else goes in, then it should at least try and intelligently be like, all right, these guys are in overlapping areas, let's try and make sure they're in the same place. Instead of you loading into a server and be like, all right, I've killed these two people, they've gone off and done their own thing. And therefore, I'm going to be stuck in this dead wasteland. So the problem with that, the unfortunate problem for the wasteland situation is A, we've got a huge playable space, and B, there's no way to juggle players so that it keeps it constantly active. So, but there is no, there's no real solution to that right now. I don't think that's even something they can kind of patch in. That's probably like a fundamental like game system that they have to implement in like Division 2. So, yeah.
I think the other thing as well I will say is for me with Last Stand as an Australian, I've never once loaded into a server that was not poor connection to host server. And
don't even start it. I know.
More recently, I've had a situation where I'm like spending 10, 15 minutes matchmaking sometimes, and sometimes just giving up because I just can't get games. Okay. Now, this is also something I saw on the Reddit as well. I'm not the only Australian suffering this. Now, obviously, we are Australia. We are far away. We are a small population. I get that. I'm not really whinging about Australia problems per se. I'm more whinging about the fact that I think the back-end sort of connection setup is very negative for people, and it on two fronts. One, that poor connection to host server, and two, just straight up lag. You know what I mean?
The matchmaking is so bad in Last Stand. You want to know how I got my level 40 in Last Stand on my first character? I jumped into a game. I jumped into a game. No, not heal boosting. Well, yeah, sort of. But listen this up. We jumped into a game. I was level 39. I streamed this as well, by the way, so you can watch it back. But I jumped into a game. I got level 39. And guess what the matchmaker put us in? They put us all four in a game. No teammates, no enemies. It was empty.
What?
It was empty. And then we got one opponent halfway through the game when we just captured all the points and waited for the game to end. We got one opponent. He got killed once. He left. And then the next 4 people that joined, get this, they joined on our side of the team. So it was 8 versus no one. The matchmaking in this game is not only server-wise, but with opponents, it is horrible. The worst I have ever seen in any game ever. It is so bad. I don't even know where to start, but something's messed up.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Something is messed up, and it puts you in games that are already like halfway through, where your team is like losing 2,000 to 9,000 points. Pretty much an impossible to win. You load in a game, instantly get mercy ruled, another loss. Like it doesn't work. It needs like some sort of people like we need to redo this. Honestly, it's not a fun experience.
So we're going to move on to the year 2 stuff in a moment. But first, I just want to talk about this very briefly. Rainbow Six Siege is another game that's out there. It's a Ubisoft game. It's a Tom Clancy game. It's a tactical shooter. It's really interesting if you look at that game because it has a growing esports scene. And if you look at like their YouTube videos that are out there, which obviously I do a lot because I play the game a lot, you'll see many YouTubers out there with like 500,000 and 600,000 views per video, and they put out videos every single day. My point is that people really like watching PvP in Rainbow Six Siege. They really love it. In fact, my question is, is this going to start evolving from the Division, right? Are we going to see this now with this Last Stand game mode? Do you expect that the PvP game will grow in popularity? Or do you feel like, no, that's not going to happen. It is what it is. We need to accept that. It's going to be like this. Let's accept that. Like,
with all the hackers, is the netcode.
Is the PvP game going to grow, or is it really just like going to stay where it is? So Marco, what were you going to... Oh, sorry, Arekkz? No, you go, Arekkz.
It's not going to grow because it's not a PvP game. It's a PvE game with optional PvP. So I mean,
Okay.
As much as I do enjoy it, like going back to what I said before, I had fun with it. But the brutal truth is, it's not a competitive PvP mode to the same extent that Rainbow Six is. Rainbow Six, you can sit and watch it. You can sit and watch Call of Duty. You can sit and watch Battlefield, Halo. You don't really sit and spectate Last Stand game modes because they're so, the fact that you have even if it is a PvP mode. The fact that you have a PvE component in it just discounts it altogether, right? That's the unfortunate reality. I think
that's not true because MOBAs have that as well. MOBAs have a big PvE part as well. Laning phases, mercenary camps.
But that's, I don't mean to say that like nothing competitive can have PvE, but I think like in this particular situation, I just don't think like the mode is in any way conducive to spectating. Like in a shooter, you want to see player skill, right? You want to see like someone win because they're outsmarting the other team. But in this game mode, and sure, again, you can have like holding points. You can you've got COD matches where you've got to hold down points and whatnot. But fundamentally, the mode isn't really geared towards that kind of content, right? I enjoy playing Last Stand, but I wouldn't sit and watch someone play Last Stand. But I would sit and watch someone play Rainbow Six match, or I would watch a Call of Duty match, right? Because like that's fun to watch. But like,
sure.
Whereas Last Stand is something I played more so. I think, to be honest, I think that the real like if you kind of like think of it like a competitive further down the line longevity thing for Division would be if they turn survival into battle royale. I feel like that's the solution, but maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Breezy, do you expect the PvP game will grow as a result of these changes that we've seen, or do you think it'll sort of stay the same in terms of its popularity?
I would love to see it grow. I don't see any sort of esports scene or them pushing any form of basically everything that Arekkz was saying. This is not a PvP game, you can see that we've been asking for an arena for so long, and what we got was like a half PvE game where it just doesn't really work. There's too many other variables too. Like, this is supposed to be a shooter, yet this dude's throwing a thing that homes in on me. He threw it from he couldn't even see me, and this thing just came at me, and like 90% of my health is gone. There's no skill in so much that's in the PvP of this game. I don't think that'll ever happen. Back to your question, I do hope that it does grow, because I would love to see a Rumble. Just 8 players or something like that, 12, where everyone's just running around killing each other. A smaller control map, maybe some team deathmatch, or private lobbies where you can actually have your team against another specific team.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to see that in this game.
Yeah. Marco, you've been on the record in the past saying that you do feel as though the game is quite skill based. Do you feel like the PvP game will grow and thrive as a result of these changes to PvP?
I don't think so. I think the things that are holding it back for the most part is, for one, the netcode. I don't know what's wrong with it, but there's like quite some delays on skills, maybe like delays on damage. The servers are not always that good. Second thing is I still see a lot of hackers, both on Last Stand and in the Dark Zone. Like, it's 1.6 now, and they're still there. That's kind of withhold it. And then there's so many broken gameplay mechanics that you can't really take PvP too seriously. Of course, doing those things they take skill to do. A new player would not be able to sidestep, would not be able to know where the spawns are, would not be able to put a build together that would actually function well with all those things. But all these things are so cheesy, so to speak, that it can.
Yeah, I totally
really,
agree. I don't think the three things that you just listed then are skill. I think all of those are cheese, by the way.
They take a lot of practice to master, but they're still cheese. That's
Sure.
like they're still. Sure. That's why you can't really take it too seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
To be clear though, just before we move on, one of the things, one of the kind of like last things for that is that very much in a similar way to kind of what I've said about survival in the past. If they did want to take it slightly more seriously, there's scope for it because the framework is there. Like if they like the mode as like personally, the way I see it is as Last Stand exists right now. There's not like kind of too much scope for it to grow. But fundamentally, they now have an arena that they can work in, right? If they decide, like in 1.7, to add because the thing is, they don't have. I'm not suggesting they take anything away, right? People still enjoy it, they can still play it, but all they need to do is add more stuff to it. We're now in this kind of position where you can load into playlists, right? They could quite easily strip out the NPCs, take out all the AI, and just make a team deathmatch variant, right? You can lock it down into DZ1 and have it as a different playlist. You either load into Last Stand or you load into like Last Stand TDM, right? If they wanted to try and go slightly more serious, they could then just drop some of these playlists in to their existing framework. Because still, if you want it to still be controlled, but just like remove some of those other components, then there's still scope to make it work. I just feel like as it exists right now, not quite there.
For sure. Well, that's the PvP discussion, and obviously this patch was all about PvP. The future patches fall into the Year 2 content bucket. Now, the developers have just announced Year 2 in a celebratory stream to celebrate 1 year anniversary of the Division, and they announced that there are going to be 2 free DLC packs. And the first DLC pack is going to have 3 major features. It's going to have these things called feats, which are essentially achievements. It's going to have loadouts, and they're also going to have seasons, which from the sounds of things are modifiers on the content. So, for example, if you're doing some sort of run, you'll do more damage if you're within 10 meters of the target. It sort of changes up the way that you play it. But they did confirm that there's no large-scale expansions, no extensions to the story in that first content drop, though they kept the door open for that in the second. They did say that there's no new map areas, no new missions, lots of things that I think many people were hopeful for that aren't coming. And that's pretty clear now. So I have obviously put out a video on that topic saying my thoughts. I probably won't go over those now or maybe just weave them into the discussion. But we'll just kick off maybe Breezy. What are your general thoughts on this Year 2 announcement? How does Year 2 look for you?
Not that good. I mean, we're not getting any gear, increase. We're not getting any new map zones. And even if it was, I figured it'd be just like a bigger dark zone or something that doesn't even matter. While I am very excited to see something like Seasons, there's a game that I always talk about called Path of Exile, and I'm sure everyone's heard about Diablo 3, where basically that's what's in the game. Personally, I don't really think that this game has like enough fun PvE content to really make that exciting. I would love to see modifiers on like named enemies, sort of like how they have it in Diablo. Like I said that from the beginning, I would love I just go out there where PvE isn't like PvP. These bosses are like dropping these weirdo things on the ground that you have to start dodging and doing all these cool things, right? Like I would love to see that. But I don't really think the PvE game as a whole, like if they introduce some new mechanic like that, would really excite me that much. Like, oh, I can't wait to start over from level 0 and, kill Barrett again. Yeah.
From 10 meters range as opposed to from 15, Arekkz, thoughts on the Year 2 announcement?
I'm actually on the completely opposite side to a lot of the people, right? Because there's been like a lot of kind of like negative stuff around this. And well, yes, just to be very clear, I'm not being like an apologist for Ubisoft or anything like that. But I was kind of, I was very much of the mind that, having bought the season pass and having, I had no idea. Prior to this, they'd not communicated in any way, shape, or form whether there was even going to be a year 2. There wasn't even a hint at it. So, so I didn't really have, to be honest, I didn't have any expectations. I was kind of thinking that maybe Last Stand might be the end and we might just have to sit tight until a Division 2. So the fact that there is content already, like, because I went in, the fact that I didn't expect it means I went in with low expectations. So I'm already, cool with whatever we're getting. Anything we're getting is a bonus, right? I think some people have gone in with, unnecessarily high expectations, thinking without even having it confirmed, like, we're surely year 2, given how, the game's got a great community behind it, surely they're going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, you can hope for that, but if you assume it and, you get your hopes too high. I mean, for fundamentally, we play a looter shooter, right? So one of the things that I'm actually looking forward to, seasons interest me. Like, I agree with Breezy, right? That the PvE missions in this game aren't massively exciting, right? There aren't many missions that I can really look at and be like, that was a cool mission. So I don't know whether it's going to be that much fun to go in and just replay that mission with a modifier. What I do like the idea of, though, as someone that does a lot of kind of like, customization, likes to kind of like, find things and earn things and whatnot, this whole vanity slot thing. So having something to work towards in a season, something for me to kind of jump into, get involved in, play, and then have something to visibly say, I took part in this season, this is what I've got for it. I'm cool with that. But also, the other reason I'm kind of potentially cool is because I'm looking at the slightly bigger picture than just year 2. Like, my mindset is, if these content packs are small, then the chances are not the entire team is working on it. If the entire team isn't working on it, then they're probably working on something else, and that probably something else is probably going to be Division 2. So, if that's the case, I'm cool with that. I will happily just play year 2 with whatever kind of free content that's in my way. I'm not paying for it, so if I'm not paying for it, then I don't really have a right to complain. Like, at the end of the day, it's free. Play it if you enjoy it. If you don't, then cool. But if it means that then they're going to give me, like... Because, look at Destiny, right? They've got the live team. The live team work on content, and the content we get from them is a lot smaller, right? You look at April Update, they regurgitated the existing content and then kind of spewed it back out in a different packaging. You look at Age of Triumph, we're getting the raids regurgitated with a few more, things like that. So that content is smaller, and the reason for that is the live team is a small team. The rest of the team is working on Destiny too. So if they're giving us purposefully small content, it's because not the whole team is working on it. I mean, we don't even know. Maybe Massive themselves aren't working on year 2. Maybe like I think Redstorm already confirmed their involvement. Maybe it's Redstorm and other studios. So if that's the case, then I'm cool to just sit back and play the stuff. And also, one of the things that you said in your video that I don't completely agree with, you said that typically with announcements you lead with your big stuff, which is generally speaking true. But if you look to say someone like Bungie, they very carefully split their announcements. They've got like 3 streams and they talk about one big thing, then another, then another. And while yes, it's probably quite clear that year 2 summer update is just going to be like seasons, and that doesn't mean they've been purposefully vague about what the second update is. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do within the game. Like, I'm actually quite excited about. There's so much content in the game that if you just tweak it slightly, can make it really, really good. I mean, I keep going back to it, but survival is basically battle royale, but it's not quite there. Like, you could make a few fundamental changes, roll out a battle royale game mode, and I will play that game no end, right? If they drop that in year 2, I will be so happy. Like, that in itself could bring life back in the game, right? I mean, or there's other stuff you can do within the realms of the game. I mean, people want expansions, but realistically, why do you want more expansions in the map when the fundamental game is still not quite perfect, right? I would rather they just use year 2 to kind of fix things up, give us more stuff within the realm of what we got, but then give us kind of a much better experience overall. So I'm actually kind of cool with it. The fact that they were remotely vague, I think there's a lot of potential things they could do. So I'm kind of positive, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. That's cool. It's a good perspective. Marco, thoughts?
I was honestly expecting big things, especially after a second wave of the ETF was announced and the whole rework in patch 1.4 happened. Like, you're not gonna rework the entire game almost 2 times if you're not planning on like pushing the game for many years to come, right? You want a base to be good, and then you can build upon that. So I was obviously pretty disappointed with the whole content package. I know it's free, but there were a lot of things indicating for me that was going to be more than that. For example, the addition of microtransactions to create extra revenue. They would maybe help to push more DLC out. But honestly, I'm not mad about that we're not getting more. I'm just a bit sad because I'm looking at this. I'm thinking to myself, they probably don't have a very big budget to work with. As Arekkz said, it's probably a very small team working on the game at this moment. Maybe they're working on Avatar, maybe Division 2. That's all cool and stuff. But it also means for me that many of the gripes and many of the issues that are in the game right now, they're gonna stay in the game until the game dies out. Like,
Totally agree.
The core mechanics of it, all those things, they're not gonna be fixed ever. And in the past, I was able to look past these issues and just enjoy the game for what it is, with keeping in mind, keeping the notion that one day the game's going to be better. One day the game's going to be improved. One day we will actually see that perfect game we were all hoping for, and we're slowly building towards that. But now seeing that they probably don't have a big budget, probably don't have a big team on it, probably can't spend a lot of resources on it, it's become pretty clear to me that what the game is right now, it's what the game is always going to be, with a few very small bug fixes and modifiers here and there. And honestly, that really killed it for me, because as I said, the current state of PvP, I'm not enjoying it a whole lot. So it's a pretty depressing time for me in the division right now. I think we're gonna have to get a divorce or something.
So are you sort of indicating that you would probably not be as engaged with the game going forward as a result of these announcements?
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna make a video about this as well for my channel, but this has really killed the motivation in the game for me, to be honest with you.
Sure. Well, that's very sad, and I know that obviously a lot of people will be very disappointed to hear that. I mean, I guess similar to your thoughts, I immediately think about things like server performance and lag, poor connection to host server. There's just no way they're going to give us massive server upgrades when they're not committing to a year 2 content plan. Rainbow Six Siege, for example, to bring up that game again, did go through some pretty significant server improvements. They're still pretty shit, don't get me wrong, but they're better than they were, and they did that because they were committed to the future of the title. It's pretty clear that Massive aren't committed to this title in the same way. So I really feel like, at least from a server latency perspective, I really wonder how much better things can be. And then you talk about things like, animation strafing and all those issues, and
they're going to be there forever.
Oh, absolutely. And how hard it's been to balance the game when the larger portion of the Massive team were on it. Now we're going to be looking at what I expect is a smaller live team, fewer resources, fewer brains around the table, so to speak. I think the chances that those balance issues will be corrected are also pretty limited as well. I look at things like, the SASG or the Sausage Fest that Last Stand game mode is at the moment, the stagger about that. I mean, that is cool on one level, not cool on another. I wonder whether or not that'll be changed anytime in the next 5 months. Will the one-shot Seeker Mine be changed in the next 5 months before the next content drop? I expect not. I expect it's there to stay now, I'm not saying that either of those things are game-breakingly terrible and must be destroyed. All I'm saying is that there's probably a conversation that needs to be had about the fine-tuning of those things, and I don't suspect that conversation will happen now because of what Massive have laid out in front of us. So my question to you guys, obviously, is where do you think the game is going to go now, between now and the next content drop, and maybe after that? Like, do you expect that this game will continue to hold on this existing group of players? Will players leave? Is there a chance that it'll attract more players? Just putting that out there. I know that's a bit of a crazy thing to say, but I mean, Breezy, what do you think will happen to the player base and the overall identity of the game in the next few months?
I personally see it slowly milking out. I don't think these year 2 changes or anything that new players are going to want to come and be like, oh, I heard, they're adding achievements. I can't wait to get my, I've always wanted to play the Division, and this is going to be the deciding factor that's going to bring me in and really do it for me. Well, I am hoping what you guys have been saying, that we're going to get a Division 2, like some awesome thing. But as far as how the game is right now, I don't see any of these changes bringing people back in, or even people who have taken a break from the game. Like, I don't see anybody wanting to come back for achievements. Now, if they did something with survival and gave us a battle royale, that sort of thing, or improvements on Last Stand for some more PvP modes, definitely see people coming back for that. But just those simple things, I would think it'll just slowly trickle into the few people that are going to basically die with this game,
Arekkz, thoughts?
So, I mean, again, like, I think it's an interesting balancing act, right? I mean, this year, definitely. I mean, from what we've heard so far, I mean, like, I will play year 2 stuff, I'll mess around with it, and there'll be things that I'll drop in and do. I agree, there's not really going to be anything that will potentially make someone think, oh, I want to, I've never played Division, I'm going to play it now. So I definitely kind of echo what Breezy said with that. I think at least the seasons format has a rather interesting potential, because with games like this, it suddenly makes, a game like this where you would normally have to play a lot of the time to kind of make sure you're constantly geared, to make sure you're constantly at the top and ready for whatever's next, right? With seasons, at least it kind of puts the game into a position where you could drop in for, say, like a week, you play what you need to do, you wait till the next season, so you might have I think that kind of content might be a lot more sort of drop in, drop out. But I feel like there's definitely still scope. It's important to realize there's still a lot like a live team can do. They might not be the full team, they might not have the full budget, but that doesn't mean to say that you can't get good stuff out of it. There's still a lot of potential behind the teams. I think all the more reason, going back to what we said right at the beginning, why they should, if they're going to do an ETF for 1.7, because Julian Garrity said that he likes the ETF and they want to continue doing it. If they're going to do an ETF for 1.7, they should get people in early. I'm talking, get people in. I mean, to be a certain extent, it's already kind of too late for summer update, because they've obviously already decided what they want to do. But if they really want to bring people back for, say, the winter update, get your ETF in now and be like, guys, what do you want in game? Hit it, but feasibly, speak to people and be like, feasibly, we can do X, Y, and Z. But what do you want? Because again, as I said, I'm still remaining hopeful, because I think to myself, there's a lot of stuff that you can make work in this game, and with the existing framework, and if they can do it, they can bring people in. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm getting sick of how many times I've said it myself. But and I know some people out there might not be a fan of this game mode, but I don't think people will quite realize how much of a big following there is for something like Battle Royale. If you could turn survival into that, I don't mean change survival right now, because let people still play it, but add a playlist where people can play Battle Royale. You can get people behind that. People that haven't played the game before will then suddenly come back, because there were a lot of people that came back around survival. Survival was probably one of the best things for this game, right?
It was.
There were so many people that came back in and were like, "This is really cool," right? But the problem with that, they have survival is such a gem, but they've just dropped it. They've literally just dropped it, and it's just it was great for a while, and it's now been forgotten. So I think, yeah, there's still a lot of scope. I'm forever an optimistic person, so I'm going to sit back, and I'm still going to continue kind of play the game and enjoy it. Yeah, but sure, maybe I'll play it a little bit more passively. But then I can juggle other things at the same time. But hopefully, I'm gonna reserve judgment and just sort of wait and see what happens. But again, I mean, the main thing is it's the juggling act, right? If the live team can kind of keep people going for a while, to at least kind of keep people thinking about Division and whatnot, then if the main team behind scenes are working on something else, then hopefully by the time Division Year 2 comes to an end and people are starting to trail off, then they can be like, hey, by the way, here's a trailer for something new, and then you'll be like, whoa! Yeah. And then it's a year of speculation and stuff, so yeah.
Marco, do you think that the player base will sort of echo your disenchantment and sort of move on from the game, or do you think that there'll be always a loyal player base and it will continue to survive?
I'm honestly not sure. I think there's going to be a lot of people like me that are going to just play the game less and less. They might check out some of the new updates when it comes out, but I don't expect those updates to hold people for more than a few days. I honestly don't know. I hope that Arekkz is right, but I can't look into the future. I have high hopes, I hope that I have high hopes that Arekkz's high hopes are correct. But I don't have high hopes for the game myself. I think it's not going to go very far, honestly.
Sure. Yeah, I wonder whether or not, because I put out my video being like, yeah, it feels bad, man. And most people agreed with me. There was a certain portion of the player base that were like, man, you jumped the gun on this. We don't know what's coming. It could be amazing. What are our thoughts? What would you say to those people? Are these people possibly right? Maybe there's some big surprise that Massive has in store for us? Or is it a case of guys, we really need to accept that this is what it is. Let's just accept it.
I don't agree a lot with you. You know that. We always disagree, but I agree with you on this
one. We always disagree, Marco. We do.
Well, I agree with you on this one.
We're famous for it.
It's I think you're right. I think it's the beginning of the end, as you put it very nicely in your video title.
Sure. Well, I think that is obviously a bit sad, and I feel kind of really down ending the podcast in this way, because obviously you got, some people in the community, and we all have an audience behind us, which is we're very fortunate to have. And I think all of us are sort of fairly agreed that, it's certainly not a bright future ahead. It's a bit of an uncertain future. It could be better than we currently think. but a lot of conclusions sort of lead us to this is probably not going to be the division's year, and we're probably going to be waiting for stuff in the future.
I'm still flying the positive flag. Hey.
You are. That's
own
true.
Corner. Let's end on a positive note. I'm standing
No, but
here.
you didn't say the game would thrive as a result.
No. Well, if they put Battle Royale in, if they put
Maybe.
massive, if you're watching this podcast, just like seriously, I will explain to you in the ETF how to make Battle Royale in survival. I have it written down, and if you put it in game, your game will be fixed. It'll be great. Like everyone will play the game, and
massive.
It'll win Game of the Year 2017. Actually, no, that's Zelda Breath of the Wild. It'll win second Game of the Year.
It will.
There you go.
All right, guys. Well, on that
rates.
sort of on that upbeat note from Arekkz, probably a good time to wrap it up. So thank you very much to all of you for joining us. As in Arekkz, BreezyPeazy, and Marco. It was really great having you guys here.
Rip Drew, man.
Don't know. Yeah, thank you. I don't know when the next podcast will be because obviously we're not quite sure what the horizon looks like. But yeah, obviously these have been really enjoyable thus far. And if this is the last one of these podcasts that we had, then I feel like it was a damn good one to finish on. So thanks very much, gents. And yeah, guys, everyone out there, everyone listening, thank you very much for watching. Certainly I will continue to make videos, and I'm sure that even everyone I think in this space is still going to continue to have a voice in the division world, of
course.
In one way or another. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going anywhere. You know, we've all got a microphone and interconnection, so you can obviously expect to hear plenty more from us in the future. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. Really hope you appreciated the podcast, and if you did, obviously drop it a like and share it out there. But thanks for watching. Take good care, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.